Microsoft is getting ready to introduce a brand new function into Excel called Group By. Now what Group By is going to allow us to do is to take a data set and create a pivot table, but use a formula to make the pivot table instead of the more traditional pivot table tools. Now why might you want to do this? Well, here's an example of a data set, and you can see I've got these two pivot tables showing sales broken down by channel and product, with totals for each of those channel groups. One of these was made with a pivot table, and one of them was made with a formula. Now looking at the two, you probably can't tell the difference. But functionally, watch what happens if I go in here and I add a new product, like pants. And as soon as I hit enter, one of those tables updates and the other does not. The one that updated was built using a function. The one that didn't was built using the old school pivot tables. Now I can go to the actual pivot table and do a right-click refresh and get those pants, but that is an extra step that the user had to perform. Likewise, if I were to go back in here and take pants out and replace it with something like I already have, like long sleeve, the function-based report updates automatically. The pivot table has to be refreshed. As of the recording of this video in November of 2023, the Group By function is still in development, so this is more of a preview. Things might change when the official release occurs. Let's look at the syntax of the Group By function, and then we'll look at some really cool examples. So the syntax for Group By goes like this. We start with Group By, and then we have row fields, values, and function. These three arguments are required. Then there are a series of optional arguments: field headers, total depth, sort order, and filter array. Now this looks like a lot of things to deal with, and if you use every facet of the Group By function, it is a lot. But it also gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility. So let me explain what each of these arguments is responsible for. And when you see them in action, you'll quickly realize that it's actually very easy to use this function once you understand what the pieces are. So here's the more traditional layout of the formula. So we'll start with the row fields. This would be what you would drag into the rows field well of the old pivot table feature. It's the categories in your data set that will make up the row by row grouping calculations. You can have one or you can have multiple row fields. Then we have values. This is the data that will be calculated or aggregated. So the equivalent of what you would put in the values field well of a pivot table. This can be a single or multiple columns. Next is the function argument. This is the calculation that you're going to apply to the values. Here's a list of all the functions that Group By currently supports. This list has been changing over the development cycle of Group By. Some things that used to be here are now gone, so don't be surprised when it's officially released that this list may be different. Now into the optional arguments, the field headers. By typing in the numbers 0, 1, 2, or 3, you can control whether the field headers from the source data are used in the Group By, and if they are, whether or not they're displayed. For the total depth, when using multiple columns in the row field section, this will allow you to control whether grand totals and subtotals are displayed and where they're displayed. Then we have sort order. This gives us the ability to control the ascending or descending sort order of the calculation results. You can supply multiple sort order arguments, so that way you could say level 1 is sorted in ascending order, but level 2 might be sorted in descending order. And then finally, the filter array. This allows you to reduce the data set by some Boolean operation, like sales greater than $50, or regions equal to central. This would be the same thing as using the filter function. This is the only argument I'm not going to get into in this video, because there's so many ways that you could use it. I'll probably end up devoting another video specifically for this argument. Now let's look at some uses of the Group By function by creating a basic one-column grouping that has no headings and is unsorted. So this would be the most bare minimum way to use the Group By function. Once we have that done, we'll look at a basic one-column design that uses headings but still is unsorted. Then we'll look at a two-column grouping with headings but not showing subtotals. And then we'll look at that same two-column with headings and showing the subtotals. Then we'll look at a two-column with headings with subtotals and sorted in descending order. After that, we're going to look at a customized multi-column structure that uses headings and subtotals and is sorted in descending order. And then lastly, we're going to look at a customized two-column with custom headings and subtotals sorted in descending order. This demonstration file is available for download, so you can open it on your computer and follow along with me, build this at the same time, and also use it as a reference to go back and see the formulas that I wrote, and you can break them down piece by piece at your own speed. So here we have our data set. We got the date of the sale, the product name, the channel name, and the amount. And so our first example, which will use the group by function in its most basic use, is just to sum up the amount of sales by channel name, no headings. So we'll start with group by. Now, because I'm using a proper table, I have the luxury of just clicking at the top of the column to select the entire column's data. So the first argument for the rows wants to know which column are we aggregating by, and we're going to choose channel name, comma. The values argument, this is the column of numbers that are going to be aggregated, and that's going to be the amount column, comma. And here you can see all the different built-in functions that the group by function can use. These take the place of more advanced lambda calculations. Now, if you want to calculate by something that is not here, you can write your own custom lambda formula and put it here in this function argument. That way you can do anything you want. But if you're in a hurry and you want something simple, you can just pick something from this list. Now, even though I can pick any of these, for all of my examples, I'm just going to use the simple sum. Close our parentheses, hit enter, and here we can see total sales by channel name. Notice that there are no headings in this version because I didn't define the argument that controls headings. If you leave that argument blank, then in the data set that you feed it, if the first row is different from the second row, in other words, say the first row has text but the second row has numbers, then it assumes you have headings and it will use them. But if your first row and all subsequent rows appear to be of the same information, then it will not put a heading in. So let's look at our next example that uses the headings. So for this one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sum up the amount column and group it by channel name, but we will use the headings that are provided from the data source. So we'll start with group by, but now instead of selecting just the data for the rows, I'm going to select the data and the respective heading, comma. For the values, not just the data, but the data and also the heading. Incidentally, your array dimensions must match. So if you use the heading in one, you must use the heading in the other, comma, and we'll use sum as our aggregator. But this time we're going to hit comma so we can get to the field headers argument. No, I don't have them. Yes, I have them, but I don't want you to display them. No, I don't have them, but you can generate them. And if you generate them, it's going to make very poor choices. The headings are not going to be what you want. So this is a choice that you'll probably never use. And then finally 3, yes, you have them and you want to show them. So we're going to put in a 3 that says, yes, we have headings and we want to show them. Hit enter. And now we can see our sales aggregated at the channel level and we have a heading. So now that we've seen single column aggregations, now let's look at multi-column aggregations. Now let's calculate the total sales amount by product and then break each product down by their respective channel and use the integrated headings. So we'll start out with group by. I'm going to highlight the data and the heading for the product column and then drag over to include the channel name column. Because I've selected 2 or more columns, this will create an automatic hierarchical grouping, comma. Our values will be the amount and the heading, comma. We're going to do a sum, comma, and we have headings and we want to show them. Close parentheses, hit enter, and now we have a multi-level breakdown. So we can see for the product in that particular channel how much the total sales were. Now, what if we want to see this same thing, but we also want to get subtotals at every change in the product? Well, let's write another group by that aggregates the amount by product, then by channel name, but then uses subtotals at each change in the product. So we'll start off with group by, same as before. I'm going to select the data and the heading for the product name and the channel name. Those will be my row fields. Then for my values, the data and the heading, comma. I'm going to use a sum, comma. I have headings and I want to show them. And now for the total depth. This is where we get to see or hide, as well as control the placement of grand totals and subtotals. So we could say I don't want to see any totals at all. I just want grand totals. I want grand totals and subtotals. But options 1 and 2 will place everything at the bottom of their respective groups. Whereas if you use -1 and -2, it will place the grand totals and subtotals at the top of their respective groups. So I'm going to say option 2 for subtotals and grand totals. Close parentheses, hit enter. Let's zoom out a little bit. And now we can see at each change in product name, there's a total row for that product. But all of this is still being presented in alphabetical order. So let's look at creating this same report, but sorting the sales for each channel in descending order, and then sorting each respective product in descending order by total. So just as before, we're going to aggregate by using sum for the amounts, product name, and channel name level. We want subtotals and grand totals at the bottom of the respective groups, but we want to sort the groups in descending order by amount for each channel within the respective product, and then sort in descending order by product's total. So we'll start with group by. We'll get the product name and channel names data and headers. We'll get the amounts data and headers. We're going to use a sum as the aggregation. We want to show the headings. We want to show the grand totals and subtotals. And now for the sort order. The way the sort order works is that you define which column you wish to sort by. So product name would be column 1, channel name would be column 2, amount would be column 3. Now, if there were columns between channel name and amount, you wouldn't count those. So it's only based on selected columns. So if I want to sort by the amount, I'll tell it column 3. Now, this would do an ascending sort. If you supply a positive number, it's ascending. So if I wanted to do a descending sort by amount, I would have to supply a negative 3. So third column, descending order. Close parentheses and hit enter. And now you can see that each channel name is sorted in descending order by their respective product. But then each product grouping is also sorted in descending order by that product's total. Comparing this to the report before it, it's the same data. It's just that the first version, everything was sorted basically in alphabetical order by product and then by channel name. But in the second version, we're going straight to the third column for our sorting. We can see that the sleeveless category comes in towards the bottom of the report with a grand total of just under $11,000. But if we were to find an entry for sleeveless in the data and change it to something like $5,000, now we see sleeveless at the top of the report coming in at over $15,000 in its total. So not only did sleeveless online move to the top of the sleeveless category, but the entire sleeveless category moved to the top of the report. If that was a typo, and we were to change it to say $50, now sleeveless is back down, and online has also moved within the channel. Now this version does use multiple columns for creating the row-level aggregations, the product name and the channel name. But because of the way we selected them, that is the way that they're presented in the report. But what if we want to aggregate by channel name and then do a secondary level aggregation by product? Well, let's see if that works. So we'll start off with group by, but now instead of selecting the product name and the channel, so we can see here it's listed product name, channel name. Let's erase that. And what if we were to highlight in the opposite direction, channel name and then product? Well, as you can see, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't matter. The order of highlighting doesn't change the way that these things will be presented. So what we need to do is we need to rearrange these columns in memory. We need to build a new table in memory that shows the channel name first and the product name second. So to do that, we're going to use another function called hstack. Now, all hstack does is you feed it a series of arrays, and then it just stacks them horizontally, one right after the other in a left to right arrangement. So if I were to say equals hstack, and I pointed to the channel name column, comma, and then the second array, the product name column, when I hit enter, I get the channel names first and then the product. So it just reverses it, but it does it in memory. Well, this hstack will become what I feed the row values argument in the group by function. So we'll go to the beginning of this and say group by. And so now the row fields is going to use this hstack arrangement. So this in-memory built table, comma, here's the amount, comma, I'm going to sum, comma. No, I don't have headings, but you can go ahead and generate them. We'll get to see what this looks like, and you'll also understand why you'll never use it. Comma, we want grand totals and subtotals, and we want to sort in descending order by the third column. So now you can see the report is showing the channel name first and then the product name. You can also see why using that argument for automatically generated headings is less than optimal. Row field 1, row field 2, not exactly helpful. So let's go back and fix this. So for the channel name, I want the data and the heading. For the product name, I want the data and the heading. And then finally for the values, I want the amounts and the heading. I'll also have to go in here and change my field headers to say that yes, I have headings and I want to use them. And so that looks a little bit better. So now you can see channel broken down by product and then sorted in descending order by sales. For our final example, we're going to do a multi-level aggregation using 2 columns. We're going to put it in a custom sort order. We're going to sort in descending order by amount, but we're going to create custom headings because the headings that are in the source data you might not want to be in your final report. So this is going to be the same thing as we did in the previous version with just one extra piece added to it. So let's go ahead and create what we did in the last version. So we're going to start off with group by. We want to create an in-memory rearranged version of the table. So we're going to use that hstack. And this time I'm only going to select the data. I'm not going to select the headings because I'm going to end up creating my own headings. So I just want the data for channel name, and I want to rearrange that with just the data for product name. So that's going to hstack, comma. For the values, remember the arrays have to be dimensionally the same. So I'm going to select just the data for the amount, but not the field heading. Comma, I want to do sums, comma, no, I do not have headings, and I don't want to generate any, so 0. I do want to show my grand totals and subtotals, and I want to sort in descending order by the third column. Close parentheses, enter. Now this just gives me what I had before, and if we compare this to the previous example, it's the same data just without using the headings that came from the data. So now I want to use my own headings. This is going to require the use of another function in Excel called VStack, or vertical stacking. So remember when we had to rearrange the channel name and product name columns in memory to create essentially a new rearranged table? So we use HStack because we were stacking things side by side. Well, now I want to take all of this that I generated by the group by and stack on top of it a list of custom headings. So the custom headings I'll build and then stack it on top of what we have in the group by. Now just to show you how this would work, I'll come down here and do this separately. So I'll use VStack, and I need to give it an array of information. Now, since these are text-based headings, anything I type has to go in double quotes. So I'll type in channel, and then my second array will be product, and my third array will be sales. Close parentheses, hit enter. But look what I get. I get these words in a vertically stacked orientation because that's what VStack does. Well, I don't want to place these things one above the other. I want them to go side by side. So essentially, I want to create a one-level stack. Have the first level be these words in a side-by-side arrangement. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take these three options that I put in the VStack, which are currently 3 separate arrays, and turn them into a single list of headings that will all be stored in the single array1 argument. So to do that, we're going to put curly braces around those 3 items. So by doing that, all of this is now array 1. Well, this would be the world's weakest VStack example because you're only stacking one thing. You're not stacking anything, technically. You're just listing. But see, now we can take this entire VStack formula. I'm going to copy that, go back to the original group by, and put that VStack in front of it. So the VStack says, the first thing I'm going to stack is this list of headings. The second thing I'm going to stack is everything that the group by created. I'm going to fix my capitalization, and of course I have to add another close parentheses for the VStack. And when I hit enter, now I see the VStacked headings stacked atop the group by results. So when you're pulling data and the headings in that data are not what you'd like in your report, you can essentially build your own headings and then just stack them on top of the results of the group by using VStack. Like I said earlier, it looks like a lot of things to control and can be very intimidating when you first see it. But if you break it down into its pieces and you understand what each piece is responsible for, it's actually fairly simple. Now, as a bonus, I said I wasn't going to cover the filtering argument in group by because there are just so many things you can do with it that it really deserves its own video, but I'll at least show you a very quick example of what the filter can do. So in this report, I want the resellers, I want the stores, but I don't want the online channel to be included. So I'm going to go back into the group by function. After my sort order, I'll put comma, and here's where you build a Boolean operation for testing. So in this case, I want to test my channel name column, and I want everything that is not equal to, and then in double quotes, online. So if you're not equal to online, I want you in the report. We'll hit enter, and notice that the onlines have disappeared. I could have just as easily as said equal, and I only want the onlines. So anything that you can define as a filter can go into this argument. I'd say one of the biggest arguments against this is going to be the lack of supported artwork. Because one of the great things about the pivot table is all the built-in artwork that you get for free. But notice in this example, I have artwork shadings at the subtotal level and the grand total level. But I didn't just paint these manually because if the data changes, the artwork is going to get misaligned and I'm going to have to re-execute that. But look what happens if I go in here and I add a category that I haven't had before, like pants. Notice how all the artwork has shifted. Or if I were to do something like go into the original formula and add a filter argument that says, hey, I don't want to see the online, so channel name not equal to online, and see how the artwork is self-managing. Now to do this, I had to employ some creative conditional formatting. Now I'm not going to go into this now, but I do have this file available for download, so you can go in and reverse engineer the whole thing and see how it was all set up. But if I were to click on one of these cells and go to conditional formatting, manage rules, we can see the different conditional formatting rules I've put in place to handle things like how we display the subtotal rows and how we display the grand total rows. So make sure you download this file so you can go in and see how all this was done. So let me know what you think about the upcoming group by function. Is it something you think you'd want to use? Are you just going to stick to the old school pivot tables? For me, I think I would use both of them. Use the tool that best fits the situation and the problem you're trying to solve. There really isn't any good bad here. It's just options. So we've seen a lot of different ways to use the group by function in conjunction with other functions like vstack and hstack. And if things went a little quickly, you can always just rewind, watch the video again, but also we have the file available for download, so you can go in and critically examine each of these formulas and see exactly how they were built. Thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate your support. And as always, at BCTI, the learning never stops.